Welcome to another episode of AI Product Builders. AI Product Builders is a weekly podcast that brings together the brightest minds in the AI industry. Each episode explores the challenges and triumphs of building and scaling AI products, providing our audience with practical advice and inspiring stories from successful founders and business leaders.
Welcome to AI Product Builders. This week, we're thrilled to host Parthi Loganathan, co founder of Letterdrop, a game changing content marketing platform for B2B marketers. Letterdrop is at the forefront of enabling businesses to efficiently create and distribute content that drives revenue, focusing mainly on SEO, LinkedIn, and empowering sales teams. So, Parthi brings a wealth of experience in leveraging AI to enhance content strategies, making Letterdrop indispensable for marketers aiming to pinpoint and replicate their most effective content. So, Parthi, welcome to AI Product Builders. It's a very pleasure having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Parthi, could you give a brief introduction about you, and then we'll talk about Letterdrop.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Parthi. I'm the founder and CEO of Letterdrop. We essentially help companies build pipeline through organic channels, and we're trying to help B2B companies essentially efficiently approach their go-to-market, especially as things are changing quite drastically with AI and GTM in general. Before Letterdrop, I was at Google as a product manager on the Google search team, hence my interest in SEO at Letterdrop, as well as the Google used to be called the G Suite team. Now it's called Google Workspaces, because I felt like I was more inclined to B2B. And so sort of combining both of those and those interests, and that's how Letterdrop came about.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? From being a product manager to being a founder. Like, what kind of key lessons do you carry from being a product manager, and how's that help you being a founder?
Absolutely. I do feel like there are definitely some things that you can take away from being a product manager, and they're applicable to founder life. That said, I would say being a founder is just like very, very different from
Yeah.
any type of job out there. You kind of need to do a little bit of everything. So
Mm-hmm.
for initially, like you're just maybe an engineer and you're building stuff out, and then maybe your customer success because you're actually helping your customers actually get on board and be successful. Your marketing, your sales, you're kind of
Yeah.
doing everything. And I feel like my role changes based on like what the company needs at any given point in time.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what is applicable from product management, I would say just prioritization, being able to say like, okay, like here's what we work on, here's what we don't work on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a SaaS company, actually thinking about your product and like listening to users.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think some of the stuff I did in terms of alignment across lots of stakeholders as a
Mm-hmm.
product manager, and some of those kinds of presentation skills or being able to tell a story, those do come in handy, but more so in a marketing type use case. And then maybe perhaps when you're talking to other executives during the sales process, being able to talk to them, speak their language, align
Yeah.
with how they see things.
Yeah, I think totally makes sense. You have to do a bit of everything. So before starting Let It Drop, like what was some of the key roles or experiences that shaped your understanding of content marketing? Like, why did you get into this? What sparked your interest?
Absolutely. And I know we call it content marketing, but I'd almost say that it's something broader. What we're really
Mm-hmm.
focused on is just like, how do you acquire customers organically?
Got it.
And
Mm-hmm.
so content is essentially a vessel for that, but really what you're trying to do is educate your customers, tell your customers that you exist, B, like get their attention, say like, here are your problems, or here's what you're missing out on. Here's the cost of those problems. Here's your solution set of things you could be doing to address these problems. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, here's how we as a company are different from alternatives. And so I think you can think about it as content marketing, but really what we're really
Yeah.
focused on is like helping businesses think about organic marketing. So there's use cases for product marketing, content marketing,
Mm-hmm.
sales across Letterdrop. And so we're really thinking about this holistically as opposed to just like, okay, here's content for the sake of content, because that's not what anybody needs.
Yeah.
But in terms of how I got into this, before I started Letterdrop, I was working on a whole bunch of sort of pivoting through a whole bunch of projects. Most of them died. I think I launched like 15 different products over the course of like almost 2 years. Two of them sort of survived. One of them became a small sort of like micro SaaS that continues to be useful and generates revenue and has customers to this day. The other one, I sold the code base and whatever users and customers we had to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And while building those, I actually hired a growth agency and I didn't have a great experience with them. And I started getting
Okay.
into growth and understanding, okay, like how do you actually acquire customers? And so I think that combined with my sort of background from Google and the search team sort of led to what Letterdrop is today, essentially helping companies acquire customers organically.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you for that. So I want to understand the AI's role in Letterdrop, like how AI plays a central role in your platform's functionality, especially in terms of content creation and also SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did a talk at the AI user conference
Mm-hmm.
this past week in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the theme or like one of the major themes in my talk was, what do you actually use AI for?
Yeah.
There was like 47 AI product demos for
Mm-hmm.
marketers on that day, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought to myself, okay, every marketer is looking at this and thinking, oh my God, there's more ways to create more stuff, more email, more web
Yes.
pages, more social media posts, more everything. And I'm thinking, who's going to consume all of this? It's just more noise for the people at the other end. And so I think in some ways AI is being like, people have to be careful about how they use AI. People at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day want to buy from people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people should think about what they want to use AI for. And so the way we use AI at Letterdrop, I like to bring it down to the three R's: uh,
Mm-hmm.
research, repurposing, and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So research is essentially, AI is very good at going out there, reading, consuming a lot of like content, like web pages, videos, whatever, and internal data, sales calls, whatever, and then compressing it into something that you can actually consume and give you like the highlights essentially. So I think AI is very helpful in terms of just compressing a lot of information for you. So that's the research angle. At Letterdrop, we use that for in a couple of different ways. Like you can toss in a webinar or a podcast like this, and you can pull out quotes, talking points, turn into a blog post, a LinkedIn post, whatever you want. On the SEO side, we can help you do research by analyzing all the top ranking pages, understanding like what are the unique talking points, what is essentially the meat across all of these pages, and pull just that out for you so you understand, okay, like here's exactly what I need to be covering, at least to be competitive with everyone else. So those are examples of research. um, or also like understanding like what your customers are saying. So we'll hook up to your sales call transcripts and we'll actually help you understand what is blocking them from
Yeah.
actually proceeding with the sales, so that you can actually create better sales enablement content, or create sort of programmatically create lots of pages which answer all these long tail questions your customers are asking you that you might never have the time to go and create. So that's research. The second thing is repurposing. So AI is very good, generative AI specifically. And when I say AI, I mean generative AI. I think like
Yeah.
there's traditional AI and there's Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good at taking something in one format and putting it
Yeah.
into another format, right? So how do you
Yeah.
go from a webinar to a blog post, or how do you go from a bunch of loose ideas to a LinkedIn post? How do I go from this customer interview to a case study? So it's very good at like taking things where like, as long as the core information is there, it can pull
Mm-hmm.
it out and transform it and put it into a
Yeah.
different format for you. Um, what it is not good at is it's not good at thinking. So if you want to just like ask ChatGPT to think for you or like give you some sort of insights, um, it's essentially trained on like the internet at large.
Yeah.
and it treats a random post from someone on Reddit and maybe something very smart from a VP as equal in importance. And so it
Mm-hmm.
ends up hallucinating and ends up giving you like incorrect information, or it gives you like very high level information. And that's
Yeah.
not what people want, right? At the end of the day, if I want to learn how to build a podcast, I can ask ChatGPT how to build a podcast, but I'd probably be better served by asking you, Shri, how do I build a podcast? Because you've done it and lived the experience and you know like what actually needs to be done.
Yeah.
Very last thing we use AI for is the recommendations part of things. And so we use AI to do things like tell you when to tell a sales rep, hey, like you just got off this call, they asked you these questions, here's the content or here are the assets that I think you should be sharing with the prospect to move the deal forward faster. So it's able to identify
Mm-hmm.
patterns and see like, hey, like I think you should be doing this action at this point in time. Or understanding the kind which accounts are visiting your website, engaging with your LinkedIn content, and then
Mm-hmm.
essentially building a profile on them. So understanding, okay, um, like this company, Letterdrop is visiting the SciSpace website, and Parthi and their engineering lead are reading these
Got
posts
it.
because they care about these things. And so I would recommend if you reach out to them to use this information we collected from the content that they consume. So those are
Yeah.
recommendations. So that's how I would think about using AI. Don't use it for thinking, use it for the sort of like behind the scenes type stuff.
Yeah. As you mentioned, right, with generative AI, there's a lot of noise. There's content creation and SEO landscape is changing very rapidly, and I see many companies joining this, right?
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And so because I worked on the search team at Google, the last thing I
mm-hmm.
want to do is make the life more challenging for my old coworkers. So they have
Mm-hmm.
to now filter through more spam on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Google has that challenge. Like it's just like there's so much garbage out there. How do they actually identify what's good when someone searches for
Yeah.
something? So that's not what we do. Like we don't want to help people create more junk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think almost every SEO tool or like any sort of like content tool you're seeing out there today, their
Mm-hmm.
focus is on like how do we just like auto generate a whole bunch of stuff for you. And if you look at most of the quality of that content, it's just like not quite there. Like no actual person really wants to consume it.
Yeah.
Maybe like you'll gamify the system, maybe like you'll get some vanity traffic. Um, but actually trying to turn that into actual like paying customers might be challenging. And so our goal at Letterdrop is really to help companies produce useful content that's going to actually move people down the sales funnel, which is why our focus is more so on information, and repurposing and like moving data from like internal data, first party data from inside your company, and turning that into marketing assets and resources that you can use to tell your story. It's less to do with like, okay, let's just like try to gamify the system and like create a whole bunch of spam. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what really separates us from a lot of other companies out there is we're really trying to think about what is right for the user, what is right in the long term, and help companies do that.
Got it. So yes, I think your platform highlights the difference between AI generated content and AI assistant content.
Yeah.
I think this is what you mentioned. Yeah. So beyond SEO, Letterdrop also emphasizes a lot of on LinkedIn and sales team engagement. Like, could you share some strategies for effectively distributing content across these channels?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is actually our number one inbound channel. So 64% of our inbound pipeline comes from LinkedIn. Uh, a lot of it, most of it comes actually from my LinkedIn, as the founder's
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. And so I think LinkedIn is a great channel. I think if you look at like all of these social channels out there right now,
Yeah.
Facebook's kind of like, I mean, for like maybe
Yeah.
like small business niches, older people, like Facebook's still around. Instagram is very consumer. It's so if you want to buy shoes or watches or clothes or makeup or anything like that, it's fine. But I think for
Mm-hmm.
B2B, it's a little bit more challenging to build brands there. Twitter is a is Twitter. Whatever is
Yeah.
happening on Twitter is happening on Twitter, and I think LinkedIn has really emerged as, especially for business.
Yeah.
for B2B, especially. I think LinkedIn has emerged as like an amazing channel for people. And
Mm-hmm.
Letterdrop is not just an SEO tool, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Yeah.
want companies to think about, like, I think a lot of marketers think about things in terms of channels. They're like, oh, SEO is one thing, email is one thing, podcasts are
Yeah.
one thing, LinkedIn is another thing. And the reality is, a good idea is a good idea, and how you put it out into the world through whichever distribution channel is almost secondary. You should just pick the distribution channels where your customers are, right? So if they open
Yeah.
email, like send it to them via email. If they're on LinkedIn, send it to them via LinkedIn. If they search a lot, put it out on your website so that people can find it. And so I think people should stop obsessing about channels and start thinking more about, okay, like how do I create good ideas, and how do I just get that in front of as many people as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for us, LinkedIn is big on that side. I think the thing about LinkedIn is a lot of companies, the way they use it today is that they just post to their company page occasionally. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and who follow, like, when was the last time you followed a company page, right? You're connected
Yeah.
to like people on LinkedIn, but you don't really go out of your way to follow a company page all that often.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what people need to understand is that on LinkedIn, you need to put a face behind anything you put out. People trust
Mm-hmm.
people, and so people need to be producing more content on their own pages. Essentially, show up as a thought leader. Show
Mm-hmm.
up as somebody who people want to trust, people want to connect with, people want to
Yeah.
follow. And then you'll start getting leads yourself. People who identify with the problems you're talking about will start coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is something that people need to sort of think about.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to like sales enablement, I think every salesperson should try to figure out, okay, how do I build my own pipeline on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn?
Yeah.
The way a lot of sales folks will treat LinkedIn today is they treat it as like their cold email channel. So like, okay, I'm gonna go send somebody a LinkedIn DM just saying like, hey, like, do you want to take a demo? Do you want to book a meeting with me? And that's pretty much
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Yeah.
that rubs people the wrong way, right? It's just like, if you just keep on spamming me, asking me to book time with you, like, I have no incentive to do that.
Yeah.
Instead, if you as a sales rep, as an AE or a BDR, are somebody that like a prospect wants to follow, they want to trust, and now when you send them that message, they're much more receptive to connecting with you, because they're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll at least learn something from you at the very least. You seem like an intelligent person who has something to share.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think sales teams need to be figuring out how to use assets and content more in order to move things forward and to build their own pipeline.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. So, regarding the challenges of integrating AI to your product, like what were some of the biggest challenges you encountered in integrating AI with content marketing, and also what opportunities do you see in the future?
So I think I kind of alluded to the ways in which we use AI in Letterdrop. It's for research, recommendations, and repurposing.
Mm-hmm.
The challenges with, so we use a combination of generative AI as well as traditional AI techniques, right? So we're
Mm-hmm.
still
Yeah.
using Spacey and NLTK and
Mm-hmm.
sklearn and all of these. Like, we have like cluster, like k-means and clustering and all that kind of stuff in
Yeah.
there. And I think everybody's just like really hyped around Gen AI. And I think you need to figure out, you need the right tool for the right problem. And so we
Yes.
use a mix of AI in lots of different ways. And I'd say a
Mm-hmm.
good chunk of it is generative AI, but like we still use traditional ML.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of generative AI, I'd say some of the challenges are, one is expectation setting with users. I think
Yes.
people get carried away with generative AI and what it can do, and then they just expect it to like do everything for them, and then they get very sorely disappointed. And so we need to set safeguards and checks and balances in place to make sure that we can guide the user to success there. And so we try
Mm-hmm.
to offload a lot of the almost like prompting or whatever you'd have, and just making it very easy for somebody to ask for something and for that to happen. I'd say the second thing is inconsistency. I think with with generative AI, everything is like very non-deterministic. It's very stochastic, and so you don't know what you're going to get. Um, and so being able to account for different temperature settings and account for like
Yeah.
repeatability is something that that we think about as well. So those are the two things I think when it comes to generative AI. The last thing that people don't talk about is the cost, and costs are
Yep.
increasing, but some of these things actually cost quite a bit of money to run.
Yes.
And so if you're doing anything at scale, it's not free by any means. And so that's the last thing I'd say that we think about.
Got it. So also with the generative AI hype, there's a lot of trust, that users have with content creation, especially can we trust the content what this generative AI is generating for us? So how do you ensure that your AI models have this trust within your users?
Yeah, so the first thing is like all of our we don't use AI to like come up with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We only use AI to transform data. So it's always using a source, either
Mm-hmm.
that's a web page or a video or a piece of audio, or a call like internal data. It's
Mm-hmm.
always coming from somewhere. And so we for everything we generate, we always give you the source, or like it's very clear like where the information is coming from.
Got
It's
it.
never just like, oh yeah, like I just made this up in a
Mm-hmm.
vacuum. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think we, at least the way we use AI, we're less worried about it hallucinating, just because everything has a source that is, hopefully, fingers crossed, from like a valuable source from a person. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes when we scrape pages and we pull information, we'll show you the source, but who knows if that web page was good in the
Yes.
first place? We're just saying like, hey, like this is what Google thought was good, but it could have been a crappy page. Or if you put like a bad podcast in and you want to extract stuff from there and there's no useful insights, it's obviously not going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to pull out anything for you because there's nothing interesting said.
Yeah.
And so it's very much garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the way we think about this is just like making sure there are sources everywhere, and then letting the user know that like, hey, if you
Yep.
put good stuff in here, you're going to be able to get good stuff out.
So I want to talk a bit about metrics, like how does Letterdrop assist marketers in understanding and measuring its impact on revenue generation, or what kind of metrics you look at in terms of
Yeah.
success? Yeah.
That's a really great question and something that's very top of mind for us. That's where a lot of our product focus is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of CEOs, boards, your sales counterpart, they will ask the marketing team, like, hey, marketing teams can spend a lot of money, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It's very
Mm-hmm.
easy to spend money in marketing if you're not careful. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think they get a lot of questions around like, okay, like we spent all this money, we put all this stuff out there. What is the ROI? And
Mm-hmm.
so, in order for us to be able to um, like be successful as a business, and we help companies extract insights, repurpose content, distribute it,
Mm-hmm.
maximize all this stuff, we need to actually show them like, okay, like what is the impact of this? And
Mm-hmm.
so things we're doing are we're trying to figure out, okay, like what are the accounts visiting different pages on your site, engaging with different LinkedIn posts.
Mm-hmm.
How do we tie that data together with your CRM data so that we can actually show you what is the revenue impact of any of this? So even if, like, say 6 months ago, a VP of engineering read a blog post from you or read a case study, and then they maybe 3 months later that they liked the LinkedIn post from your CEO, and then finally they entered the sales cycle today. We want to be able to tell you like, hey, these are all the touch points over the past 6 months that eventually like led to them, in part, to wanting to book a demo with you today. And then being able to use that to like go back and say like, not only, okay, here's the revenue that can be attributed to all this content,
Mm-hmm.
but also helping companies understand like, what do I do next? What's the next step? So
Mm-hmm.
once we have that data, we can now tell you like, okay, here's all the content across LinkedIn, across your website that actually did ultimately drive revenue. So you should be creating more of that. You should be defending these pages. Don't let these pages slip on Google. Don't
Mm-hmm.
like create more, like share this case study in your newsletter. Turn this case study into a LinkedIn post. Like this is working. Right now, like we face this problem ourselves. We have
Yeah.
like 120 blog posts. We've created thousands of LinkedIn posts. If you ask me what is my plan for the next quarter, I should be able to look back at all of that and say like, okay, this is a 10% of stuff that actually created revenue. We should just be focused on that. And today we can't answer that question. We're just like, I don't know, all of it looks the same. We don't know which ones actually contributed to revenue. And so that's what we're focused on Letterdrop. We're rolling out a lot of these features to actually help you understand, okay, what worked in the past so that it informs what you should do in the future to actually drive
Decision.
revenue.
Yeah. So where do you see Letterdrop heading in the next few years, and how do you anticipate AI evolving within the content marketing space?
So I would be lying if I can answer that question for the next few years,
Yeah.
just given like how far everything is changing. Do we have AGI in 2 years?
Yes.
Was Sam Altman lying? Like, is everything we know just obsolete? I don't know. So the reality is I don't have an answer to like years out.
Yeah.
What I do have is an answer for like, okay, like what are we going to see in the coming months, in the coming year? Is I think last year everyone got really excited about generative AI and started using
Yes.
it. They were just like, let's create. I see like LinkedIn comments. My LinkedIn comments, there are people who just like put my LinkedIn post into ChatGPT and give me
Generate.
an answer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to talk with ChatGPT. Why are you commenting on my post? This is absolute garbage. You're just parroting back like what you saw back to me. And it reflects negatively on them also. I'm just like, I actually kind of want to block you now, right? Like you're not a real person. It doesn't go like put that in a human situation. It's like you walk up to a person at an office and then you shake their hand and then you read off of a piece of paper saying like, here's what I know about you. And then you'd be like, this is a very inauthentic, um, transactional
Yeah.
conversation. Like, I don't want to be part of it. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of people are starting to feel with AI in the same way that
Yes.
when people first got those emails with personalization, it's like, hi, first name. What we have today is essentially a very advanced version of hi, first name. It's just like more
Yes.
variables, more personalization. But I think people are very good at distinguishing between like what's human and what's not. There's this uncanny valley effect where people can be like, the same way that now when you say and you see an email which says hi Shri, you just ignore it. You're like, I don't know if this is like actually from a person or
Yeah.
from like I bought shoes from a store and then they have my first name and they put that in there, but it's
Yes.
completely commercial. And so I think people are getting used to that and they're getting used to like being like, okay, like a lot of this is garbage. I'm just mentally filtering it out. Goes to spam or ignore this post or ignore this page. And so the baseline for people to do anything is you need to be able to say something or create something, whether that be an email, outbound DM, piece of content, video, whatever it may be. If AI can do it, it is not that valuable for you to do it. It's just simply not, right? Like you cannot create
Got
anything that's
it.
commoditized. You need the bar has been raised and you need to
Yes.
be operating above that.
Got it.
And if you do anything below that, like I'm sorry, it's just all noise now. It's completely commoditized. And so I think that's what companies are going to start focusing on this year. They went hard on the let's just like AI generate everything. They're
Yes.
maybe going to see the repercussions of that and the backlash from that, and people are going to start ignoring that stuff. And so what's going to work moving forward is this type of content, like the genuine insights, the genuine emails, the authentic
Yes.
relationships. And it doesn't mean you can't use AI. AI is just going to be behind the scenes. It's going to be
Yes.
assisted. It's not going to be generated.
Finally, as a YC founder, like, do you have any advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to get and apply accepted into YC? Are there any elements in the application which you believe are particularly vital for standing out?
Absolutely. So the first thing I will say, and I'm taking a step back from YC here, is
Mm-hmm.
YC is a great program, very great community, lots of like amazing founders. I think PG and now Gary Tan, a lot of like very good
Yeah.
energy around that. I think a lot of people think YC is a solution. It's just like, oh, if I get into YC, I will be successful. And then maybe if you're very young, you think that way. If I get into
Right.
if I
Yeah.
get into this college, I'm going to be successful. Or if I get this job, I'm going to be successful. If I get into YC, you're collecting accolades almost, or you think like you can checkbox your way to success, however you define success. So the first thing I would say is YC, getting into YC or YC does not necessarily it's not going to like magically make your company work.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you are the one who needs to make your company work. YC is something that could be helpful along that journey, essentially. And so I just want to take a step back and say, like, with YC or without YC, you can succeed as a founder. There are lots of great, like, amazing companies that have been built by people who are not in Silicon Valley, haven't gone through YC, haven't done any of this stuff. They just figure out, okay, there's demand, I can create value, and then they're very resourceful about doing that. So I'll get that out of the way. So once that's out of the way, assume like, okay, now you decide, okay, I want to do YC. Ask yourself if YC is right for you. I think YC is good for like certain types of companies.
Yeah.
Ask yourself if you would benefit from YC. I think
Mhm.
YC is very good for companies which want to raise funding at great terms. I think the demo day process that they have is good for that. You do take
Yeah.
dilution up front from YC. And so
Mhm.
just make sure that the economics work out for you.
Mhm.
I think YC is good for B2B companies which want to, maybe this used to be more true than it is today. But if you want to like get some other companies, if you're selling to tech companies, get other tech companies to test out your stuff early on, maybe it's a little bit helpful there. I think for other types of companies, just ask yourself, okay, like what do I want out of YC before going in? Just make sure you have a good answer to that before you do it. I think finally, assuming all of this is true and you want to do YC, the way to get into YC is to be able to do two things. One is be able to make a product, so be able to build a product and be able to like sell a product or like get revenue or users or something along those lines. If you can do those two things, I think like that takes you like very far. I think it's less helpful if you just apply with an idea. It's more helpful if you're like, okay, like I made this MVP and I have like 10 paying customers. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be big. It has to just be something small. And then just showing that like, okay, I can make this happen,
Yeah.
um, gives them the confidence to be like, okay, you're a resourceful individual who will make things happen. It's like the Airbnb founders. They tried 3 or 4 times to make their thing work and it didn't work. And to pay the
Yes.
bills, they sold cereal. And so when you see something like that, you're just like, okay, these guys are going to win in some, I don't know how big
When.
it's going to be, but they will win in some way because they don't give up. They're sort of like cockroach mode founders. You just can't kill them. And so I
Mhm.
think if you can showcase those kinds of things, I think you'll be in a good place. I think the second thing is do make sure that your idea is venture backable. Like you do want to think about like, am I operating in a market that's large enough and all that kind of stuff? But I'd say that's secondary. Honestly, if you just like do the first two things, you'll pivot into something that's big enough eventually, and they understand that as well.
Got it. I think that was very insightful. I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining us today, Parthi. Your insights on leveraging AI in content marketing, your LinkedIn strategies have been incredibly enlightening. So, to our listeners, if you enjoyed our discussion today, don't forget to subscribe to AI Product Builders and also visit Letterdrop's website to learn more about its innovative platform. Thank you, Parthi.
Thank you for having me.